3 days. So again, thank you, and thank you for joining us. This is the third work-life integration webinar in the series that we have prepared to tackle this topic and share you our knowledge and information about work-life integration. So we are live from Brussels. My name is Zoltán Vadkerte. I'm one of the co-founders of the Work-Life Hub. And next to me is...
I'm Agnes Uherecki. Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for joining again. We are here and live, and after our presentation, we're really looking forward to your questions.
Just again, a short housekeeping. So before we kick off, firstly, we hope the technology works for everyone. Please let us know if not, and we try to fix it. You can ask questions, as we said at the beginning, and we try to answer them at the end of our presentation. So please do not, again, we'd like to ask you to not use the request the floor, the option button, because it may cause a drop. So the webinar recording will be available very soon on YouTube and also on our website, and we will send you the link. Please do not hesitate to share it with your colleagues and with your network. We'd like to also ask you to switch off all your devices to make sure you get the best experience out of this webinar session. So for additional resources, please check out our website or listen to one of our podcast episodes. We've just hosted a fantastic speaker who wrote a book about Denmark and how to be happy as a Danish person. So we'd like to invite you to listen to the last episode. We have lots of white papers and also case studies available on our website. So please make sure that you visit us on worklifehub.com and see what we are doing next to these webinars.
So as you have probably seen and you have received our emails and reminders, we have launched a 3-part webinar series, and today is the last or the third part of this. All the knowledge that we wanted to share with you just really didn't fit into a single webinar. And as we have explained in the beginning of our first and the other webinar, these 3 webinars are made up of building blocks. And we designed every webinar to address different challenges and also provide actionable takeaways for you. And so just a little bit of recap, because we are going to be touching today some of the aspects that we detailed much more in the first webinar in Work-Life Integration Basics, where we address some of the key trends that were affecting and are affecting the world of work, and all of the different systems that are involved in creating work-life integration. And we also address the importance of the business case, building business case, and we're going to touch again on that, on how important it is to have the leadership buy-in. And so if you're interested in that, then just please go ahead, and on our website you can find the link to the YouTube video of that one. In the second webinar, Work-Life Integration Management Essentials, we covered some of the principles and values, as well as some management tools. And again, you can find the recording of this webinar as well. So let's see, what are we going to be covering in today's webinar?
So in today's webinar, we will be taking a closer look at real-life companies and how they have implemented certain work-life integration policies and actions. Did this and how it fits into our maturity model. We will present for about, again, for 20 to 25 minutes, and we will have plenty of time for questions and discussions. So please do not hesitate to shoot your questions towards us. Again, we'd like to thank you to all of you who have filled out our pre-webinar survey. It was super helpful in preparing our presentation, and especially the slides, and also understand your concerns and your main obstacles that you face within your workplaces and at your companies. So hopefully we will be tackling your questions and your concerns. So if not, please, again, just ask us and we try to answer to those questions as well. So you can also get in touch with us after this webinar on LinkedIn, on Twitter, Facebook, or by writing us an email. So one of the key questions that guides us in our work is, why do some organizations really get it and how come that some people work in beautiful offices and some in bad working environments? How come that some employees have great flexibility and within the same country, employees of another similar company, very bad work experiences? So through our work, we have uncovered a number of critical stages that determine whether a company or organization is ready to embrace work-life integration initiatives. And this readiness comes both from the environment they operate in and also internal structures and internal systems. On this slide, you can see the key departments that we have identified and worked with, which have a role to play in ensuring work-life integration initiatives are developed, deployed, and also sustained. So these are HR, organizational health and safety, CSR on the top of the image, facilities, and of course the overall leadership of the company, which will determine which of its culture. So also on the slide, you see the definition that we have come up with about work-life integration management. We also believe that work-life integration is not a single issue, that is the responsibility of a single department. Therefore, it cannot be tackled on its own by either on HR or only on CSR. And most importantly, these departments need to communicate to design their initiatives jointly and not separate from each other. So let's look at what this specifically means for work-life integration.
So in our work, when we try to answer the questions of why some companies are doing this, why others are not doing this, why they're doing this particular policy and not implementing another policy, we have come to this notion of maturity, that readiness and maturity. And we have we've examined a lot of different maturity models of existing systems, and we have now taken the classic 5 levels approach to maturity for our purposes. I mean, you can find a lot of background information. Dave Ulrich and Josh Persin have written extensively about the maturity levels of HR. And for example, there on the maturity spectrum, in the least developed HR departments, they may be working only on payroll. And in the most mature HR departments, which is on the other side of the spectrum in other companies, HR is totally aligned with the business objectives and it's a strategic partner in the entire development of the organization. And there are different maturity stages for all these systems, for CSR, for health and safety, for leadership, and also for facilities. Just to give you another example, in organizational health and safety, if this particular system or department is very low level of maturity, then they only may just comply with some of the legal for safety at work. And in another company, organizational health mature, where we see in organizations they have mental health prevention campaigns, they may have even menopause awareness campaigns. So lots of other things can be done, and that's how we can measure the maturity. And this is our work-life integration maturity model, which we have developed, in which we look at a number of aspects. So this model is based on a number of different aspects that form the basis for us to categorize them and to establish the levels. So what are some of these issues that we look at? We look whether the organization is complying with national legislation. We look at the level of cooperation between the system. Does HR and facilities work together, for example? Are they part of the management of the company? We take stock of existing policies, initiatives, and programs, and also we look at the gap between what is and what could be. We look at the level of innovation, of risk-taking, of experimentation in these companies around these issues. And we also examine the underlying company culture. What's the situation in terms of transparency, of decision-making, trust? Are employees involved in these decision-making processes? Are they being surveyed? Is management interested in their feedback? Do they themselves get the appropriate feedback? And we also look at, one other aspect is the company is more outcome-oriented, or is this more of a fear-based culture in which people are managed by time and presence? And we will give you a couple of great examples afterwards. And in those examples, it's quite clear that companies and organizations, employers recognize that they cannot do all this on their own. And in most of the cases, you will see they do cooperate with third parties, they cooperate with NGOs, with civil society organizations. So as work-life integration is so transversal in nature, when we were coming up with this work-life integration maturity model, we had to look at the different systems, but then we came up with our own that you can see here. And we believe that the desire to create a kind of work environment that is conducive to employee well-being has to be present across the board. And why I'm saying that is because we do meet organizations which have a lonely champion, where they have one person in HR or someone from facilities or another person from CSR who is really committed and is really trying to drive this evolution on their own. But unfortunately, what we see is unless there's leadership buy-in, employee buy-in, and a high degree of communication and cooperation between these departments, they won't get very far, unfortunately. And they leave the company, and then everything falls apart a little bit. So these you can see on the slide are the 5 levels that we have identified, and just a couple of the characteristic examples that we could fit on this slide. So as you can see, the first level is the very basic level of work-life integration. It basically means there's hardly any work-life balance for employees, only compliance with the national legislation of working time or maternity leave, paternity leave. They get the statutory holidays, so it's the bare minimum. Second level of maturity is when there is some level of initiative, but they're rather ad hoc or very constrained. So, for example, there is a telework policy, but the telework policy is very rigid. It fixes you just one day a week and every week the same day. So you can always work from home on a Wednesday. So it's not flexible. And usually what we see is in these organizations, the take-up, another indicator of maturity, is very low. Third level is standardized. These are already starting to be pretty good places to work for, which have flexible work schemes, and take-up is quite significant. Fourth level is mastery. These are usually the organizations that you see on the working top companies from the magazine list, the top employer awards, the best place to work awards. They have really taken significant steps. They have perhaps employee resource groups, and they do point in investing in this. And usually it's already starting to get built into the DNA of the organization. And then we have a handful of organizations who are in already the most advanced level of work-life integration, who are the visionaries, and we will present to you one of them later on. And these are the companies that have dedicated so much importance to this issue that they have set up a work-life integration department or have designated a work-life integration manager. You can have job sharing, but even top sharing, referral programs, and tons of other really cool things. So we will look now at a couple of these real-life examples, 4 to be exact, companies that are on different levels of the maturity spectrum. And we will illustrate like that the very concrete things any organization can do. So I'm going to hand over now to Zoltán to share with you the first case study.
Sainsbury's, which is the second largest supermarket chain in the United Kingdom, recognizes that as many as 20,000 of its colleagues may have capabilities. In 2010, it launched an innovative partnership with Carers UK. So this is the civil society organization Agnes was referring to in the case of Sainsbury. And in conjunction with the Carers UK, developed a new policy for its colleagues who are carers. The new policy basically recognizes the flexibility required to balance work and caring responsibilities, excuse me, and also seeks to recognize and support its colleagues who are carers themselves. In its store, Camden, North London, the bakery team, which you can see on the slide, developed a flexible system of 2 to 3 baking shifts a day. The team agreed to rotate their hours each week so that no team member permanently worked a shift that did not suit them. After the change was made in 2007, 10 years ago exactly, bakery sales increased by more than 65% in the first year, and employee engagement in the bakery has risen by 10%. They are still using this system. In addition, Sainsbury's comprehensive CSR practices cover many areas such as water, raw materials, carbon, or community impact. In 2008, launched this UCAN scheme, which has helped over 25,000 people who faced significant barriers to employment into work, an achievement that finally won Sainsbury's the Business Disability Forum Recruitment Award in October 2015. Also, throughout 2014 and 2015, over 440 women at Sainsbury's participated in the Inspiring the Future campaign to offer mentoring and career advice to young women. At the same time, Sainsbury's announced that from January 2016, it requires all store managers and office-based team managers to mentor at least one female colleague who has the potential and desire to progress their careers. Fascinating, isn't it? Let's turn to Sparkasse.
Yeah, this is a very interesting story and example. We have met the HR director of Sparkasse Köln-Bonn in Bonn last year, actually, and she told us the story. And there you can see on the photo the chairman of these particular regional branches. And when he became a grandfather, so when the chairman's son became a dad, he told his father that he wanted to spend much more time with his child than his father has spent with him. And this generated such a strong emotional reaction in the chairman that it had to be translated to action. And so he decided to do something about it, about the very low take-up of parental leave by new dads in the company and because financial services and banking is still quite male-dominated sector, and especially in the ranks of leadership, women are definitely thinning out. And also it puts a lot of pressure on men to be present, to show they're motivated. And so they felt they had to break this stigma around fatherhood and parenting. So they again teamed up with a civil society organization called Fathers Network in Germany. And they started organizing in the different local branches employee support groups for dads, as well as different seminars and football and other sports events for the new fathers to bond and exchange. And Sparkasse is also still one of the biggest sponsors of the events by the Fathers Network, actually. And there was just one in January, again in Germany, where you had 3 men, very successful men, but also fathers share how they balance work and life. And it's very important to have these positive role models. And probably a lot of these separate initiatives have led to a maturing of not only Sparkasse, but also a real convergence nationwide in Germany. Actually, they have introduced a number of new laws in the past 10 years, which have resulted in quite a good results actually for the whole of society. For example, the new childcare law that was introduced meant that now 35% of children under 3 are covered by a childcare place versus only 3% 10 years ago. Now, about 66% of mothers, following an average parental leave of 18 months, return to work, compared to 40% 10 years ago. And most staggering figure is that now about 32.4% of fathers take parental leave, compared to 2% 10 years ago. So it's really a great increase. And organizations like Sparkasse, they had to reckon with this phenomena in society and also step in and really make sure that they do not alienate their talent and employees, and it can be men and women. And they do a lot of additional efforts. They have a huge talent development program, special efforts to recruit women. They're annually partnering with the Women at Work trade show, a trade exhibition where they sponsor and also participate. And what was very interesting information is that they have decided against the recertification process for one of the labels that they were getting, which would have cost them about 20,000 euro, and decided to invest it rather into their own programs directly instead of just getting another badge, perhaps which is more of a PR, external communication, internal. So that was very interesting. So Sparkasse Köln-Bonn is very involved in the community through their CSR initiatives. They have had a number of programs where they really try to invigorate the community spirit in the region, special programs on neighborhood and civic engagement. And they also cooperate with a number of different faith-based and sports-based organizations. And they even used a famous local singer and a band to have a special song that is now more attached and recognized with the brand. So this was this example, and over again now to you, Zoli, to introduce another, perhaps even more mature company.
Our third example is Dmytro Corporation, which is an American not-for-profit organization, especially engineering, information technology, and or operational concepts. The company indeed has thousands of employees at more than 60 locations worldwide. Maybe you have already heard the Dmytro Corporation. It's pretty famous of its work-life programs. For instance, if you go on Glassdoor, the company has received the highest work-life balance rating, 4.45 on a 5-point scale, from its employees over the last couple of years. So let's look shortly at Dmytro from a maturity perspective. Dmytro has just published its first CSR report in 2015, which focused on the work its employees performed as a good corporate citizen. The stories are told from the perspective of those who have benefited from community outreach and included veterans, disadvantaged homeowners, or prospective young women engineers, and many others. It's a fascinating report. I recommend you to have a look. In terms of HR policies, Dmytro is proud of its diversity hiring, professional development policies, and provides a variety of health and safety services for its employees. All this information is available on Dmytro website, and they readily and openly share all their achievements also. We do not have plenty of information about Dmytro's facility practices, but its leadership is clearly fully committed in providing available support networks, the necessary skills and training for its employees. For instance, Dmytro builds its foundations for the future by organizing women's leadership conferences, and they also support and ask their employees to participate in these women's leadership conferences and be keynote speakers as well, and also supports advancement of young women, especially in engineering. So another fascinating example now, first example was from Europe. We wanted to bring you diverse examples, and we now turn our attention to Adidas. Who doesn't know Adidas? For those of you who don't, Adidas is a German multinational corporation that designs and manufactures shoes, clothing, and accessories. It is the largest sportswear manufacturer in Europe and the second biggest in the world. It employs over 55,000 employees worldwide. It is headquartered in Herzogenrath in the Bavaria region in rural Germany, which poses plenty of challenges. Adidas acknowledges that it is really hard for its HR team to recruit top talent at its headquarters, particularly for design, marketing, and digital roles. Therefore, it responds to these challenges by reshaping its HR, talent, facilities, and leadership policies and practices. We have found a quote for you from an HR manager who put it in the following way. Top-notch talent tend to gravitate to very large cities in Europe, international cities like Berlin, Amsterdam, or London, and it is a bit harder for us to convince them to move to the rural center of Germany. We know Germany very well, Agnes and I. We travel often through Germany, and indeed, this is quite remote area, and Adidas has plenty of difficulties in attracting the top talent. It needs to be a number one employee and company in the world in a very competitive sector. So interestingly, this challenge has helped Adidas in the last years to become a top employer in terms of its maturity model on our chart. Let's have a close look. Adidas has a strong legacy in sustainable and CSR reporting for the last 17 years. Yes, you heard it very well, 17 years. It has published annual sustainability reports detailing its progress and commitments in the previous years. So it is clearly visible the company strives to report in the most accurate, reliable, and clear possible way. It also strives to harmonize the commercial interests of the Adidas Group with the private and family-related needs of its employees, and also helps them to find the perfect balance between life at and outside at work. For this reason, Adidas has set up its work-life integration department. So those of you who have been with us at the first webinar, we already spoke about Adidas and also our experience, our aha moment with Adidas and with Adidas work-life integration department team, and also the work-life integration managers. We are in contact with them. Hopefully, we will be able to bring a podcast recording with one of the leaders of this department to you in the near future, and you'll be able to see directly what they are doing. So the work-life integration team has developed over the couple of years. I think it was set up 3 or 4 years ago. Work-life initiatives such as on-site childcare, elderly or dependent care, and also various flexible time models like flexi-time programs, or the famous My Time initiative, which is a sort of lifetime working time account. But they also do part-time working schemes, where one of the most important tasks of the work-life integration team is to support the creation of part-time working management positions. Really fascinating. Also, they promote remote working, home office practices as well. In terms of its OHS, the Adidas Group has come up with 2 highly developed guidelines, not a big surprise for anyone who knows Adidas a little bit. Also in terms of facility, excuse me, and services. I just have to sip a little bit of water. Excuse me. So Adidas perfectly understands that providing its staff with a modern and innovative workplace is really crucial for people to develop personally and also professionally. Also, it has designed.
Okay, I can maybe continue the presentation. Let's see until Zoli has managed to get over his cold a little bit. So Adidas has designed and opened a couple of years ago a new office building, which is called the Pitch, where there are no designated work desks, and they give staff the freedom to choose a module and the workspace according to the tasks that they. And what this does, it creates this real serendipitous environment where employees can collide into each other and meet each other. They're not siloed anymore, but as they're walking around and using much more flexibly the space, they can really meet someone from accounting, can meet someone from HR, and someone from sales can meet the designers. And
yeah, and this data that they obtained from the Pitch forms the basis of the Adidas Group's new future workplace model, which is called My Arena.
And from all these developments and examples, it is quite obvious that Adidas has a very strong purpose and culture and development and innovation-driven leadership. So based on all these different examples, the 4 examples that we've given you, we would like to tie it in a little bit into our way of working with organizations. And of course, we are aware that even though we try not to use the usual suspects examples of Google and Facebook, the case studies that we have shown you are still, quite large organization and recognizable brands. Our objective, however, is really to understand, by tracing back the evolution of how these workplaces became the way they are now, to try to trace back the different steps and phases they went through to become these great employers of choice. And by tracing back these steps, we can help any organization to really, become the kind of organizations that we want them to be. So we really firmly believe that everybody can do something. And there are these very specific steps that any organization can take to advance on the maturity path. And this can be a startup, it can be a small, medium-sized company, a large corporation, it can be a hospital, a restaurant, a software company working with 100% different, remote team, like we have met just very recently. So this is an overview of our main work and consultancy to work-life integration, which we've been developing in the past couple of years, testing and perfecting with the help of our different clients. And this, as you can see, this approach is built on the 4 stages. First, we have the need conversations with the senior leadership about what are their perceived issues. And these challenges may be about the turnover rate, about burnout, dropping out of women following the birth of their child, or a lack of diversity, you name it. Every organization is different. Their challenges will differ from every other organization, and so will the possible responses as well. And often there is simply a mindset shift and a leadership understanding and commitment to the need to do more. And that's what we do with the roadmap. We help them take these steps. The second stage is once the main issues have been identified, we conduct our so-called diagnostic. We customize a survey that we deploy and conduct with a representative sample of the employees and the management. And sometimes we even include the supply chain or contractors as well. This takes usually about 1 or 2 days. And this gives us the first basis on which to proceed. We present these findings in a heat map report to the client, and then we identify collectively a couple of strategic areas for the intervention. We help build the business case to senior leadership, and also to make sure that the process and its importance is also understood by employees and accepted. Once these key areas have been identified, we conduct a 2-3 days strategic seminar, during which we address these key challenges and identify possible ways forward. And usually by the end of this seminar, we have a clear list of priorities. We identify the specific units who will serve as pilots. It takes a lot of experimentation and a lot of risk-taking. We designate ambassadors or spokespersons for the initiatives, and we have a clear timeline for the launch of the initiatives. We talk about internal, external communication. It can be something, catchy as a hashtag or a photo campaign, and how we're going to measure the progress. We look at key indicators, and also we try to handle objections and to really have a clear vision about the expected results. And then the fourth stage is supporting our clients, the organizations, with the process, wherever they need. It can be about formulating the policies, training and coaching line managers, about fostering communication between the different groups, helping them to set up employee resource groups or tailored workshops about, for example, time management or managing remote teams. And we also help them with the setting up of work-life integration manager function and department. So this is our roadmap. And this was the presentation that we wanted to share with you. And perhaps now we go over to you to see if you have any questions.
points you would like us to clarify, and we're going to show ourselves again.
And if you don't have any questions, we have received actually during the recording from Carl. And Carl is asking, thank you very much for the question. He's saying, well, this is all well and good, but what about small companies that don't have the means of Adidas or Mitre or your other examples? What can they do? Well, that's a great for sending this to us. And I think this is a very important point. And I was trying to get this, and we were trying to get this across, that everybody can do something. We haven't met actually an organization that we would have said they couldn't do. Even mining companies can do something, hospitals can do something, airlines can do something. But obviously you will not become the next Google. So if that is your expectation, then of course you're setting yourself up for failure. It's not going to work. And that's why we showed you this, the process for the roadmap, because this process has to start with a lot of self-examination and questioning and asking employees, what do they need, right? So if we meet companies that just launch initiatives, sugarcoating just everyone with an initiative that has been the idea of the senior management about yoga classes, or I'm not saying yoga classes are not good, but if that's the only initiative and it's for everyone across the board and without asking employees if they really need yoga classes, then that's not an initiative that we would be particularly favoring.
Yeah. And maybe you don't know about an initiative or a program or just a small step that you would be able to do if you had asked your employees about their particular need or particular problems in their personal life, or the desires they would like to study, or in terms of running marathons or having some outside work activities that somehow over. So asking them would be the first step that we would like to recommend to you to take on, because it is free. It is really available to everyone, even for small and medium-sized companies, and figuring out what would be the accessible way to go forward and make your ready and more fulfilled in their life to bring to you the best outcomes that you can get from your employees.
So thank you very much again, Carl, for this great question.
And we are thank you with the end of the webinar that you've been with us since February. We started off in February the 8th with our first webinar, then continued in March, and this was the last webinar in our work-life integration management series. And I'm really sorry that my voice disappeared, but I've been battling with a cold for about a week now. So obviously when I had the biggest problem when we recorded this webinar.
No worries. So anyway, you have seen us. We were here live and giving you this presentation. This will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you would like, you can watch it again. And just joining Zoli in thanking you for being around, sticking around, and supporting us in this work. Thank you.
Goodbye.